Go.
Vita means life, Sony, not death.
Hello and welcome to episode 27 of Triangle Squared. You are joined today in your ear holes and your video eye holes by Mr. Brett Beck here, your host, and my other good friend and loyal host of the show, Mr. Saul Bridges. How are you today, Saul?
I'm doing great because we're on lucky number 27. But doing good. Ready to eat some food here in a little bit. What about you?
Yeah, I'm ready to eat some food too, so that'll be good. So for those who don't know, we are Triangle Squared, a PlayStation geared podcast. We post every Monday at 12 noon CST and 10 a.m. PST to YouTube in video format, or for you people that just want to listen to us in a nice audio format, we post to iTunes, Google Play, music. That's what it is. Google Play Music.
Yeah,
SoundHound. Or SoundCloud.
Podcast.
You do this to me every time. SoundCloud.
They're both orange apps that have to do with music. I apologize.
Okay. Well, anyway, we post there so you can listen to us. If you do listen to us in podcast-only format, if you wouldn't mind dropping us a comment, let us know how we're doing, and getting our numbers up there so people can find us a little easier. But, Saul, this is going to be the Express episode. We're recording on a Friday instead of a Saturday, like usual.
Yes.
Due to some scheduling stuff that we had to kind of work around, but that's okay. That's life.
Sure is. And we got good old Joseph. You guys hear about him. Loki, you play with him. He's in town this week, and we're going to go get some steaks here in a little bit. So
so it's just our day to do everything, and that gives me a little more time to edit and stuff. So you know what? I don't really care.
True.
It's not a big deal. But Saul, because of that, I want to go through one real quick section that I think you might have been about to skip. What have you been playing this week, sir?
I was waiting on you, good sir. You know I've been playing Destiny 2 and almost exclusively Destiny 2.
You've been working a lot this week, I feel like, and at least we haven't been gaming at the same time, if nothing else.
It's been like 2 nights.
Yeah.
And before it's been 3 or 4. But yeah, trying to get the raid done on that. Failed miserably.
We can do this. Are we doing it? Are we aiming for it tonight? With Joe being in town?
Joe is in town, so probably not. Unless it's me, you, RJ, and a couple other people. I would say we might get it done. I was having the hardest time understanding the gauntlet for whatever reason.
But I got you. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's just like, the way I was having it explained to me, and I was being so tired, I was like, okay, so I shoot this one if they say this one, and they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, the raid is so mechanically driven in that game. That's actually what makes it fun. The fact that you don't have to have that somewhat like begrudging, I got to hit at the end of this section of the raid, I've got to fight some kind of bullet sponge, is nice. And I like the fact that there's really not a lot of ridiculous enemies outside of the baths having their little bathers, and they're still not ridiculous. Honestly, they're manageable.
The doggos. Yeah. But that's it. Of course, I've been playing a little bit of Fortnite Battle Royale. By a little bit, I mean a lot. That's why I said I lied earlier when I said exclusively Destiny 2, because Fortnite Battle Royale is super fun. Pick it up. It's free. Play with me. Squads is really, really fun and interesting.
I still need to do that.
I'm telling you, for a free game, you can spend dozens of hours in it and get your...
But I'm going to tell you the problem. I finally... Okay, well, is that what you've been playing?
Yeah, because I know you're about to say you beat that
too. So
let's
go into this. Okay, so I've been playing Destiny 2, obviously, and I did complete the raid without Saul. I betrayed him, stabbed him in the back. But that's okay. I needed to get it done, and honestly, I was just surprised that I honestly expected to go into it, fail miserably, and then just go to bed. And as we actually kept progressing through it, I was like, we're going to do it. I feel so good about this. So, did the raid in Destiny, finally hopped on. I've been back and forth in that a little bit, but I finally hopped on and beat the final chapter. And that last boss...
I saw you were having troubles on Twitter.
He was rough, but I'll still say 8 times was my final count, and that's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
Not bad at all, because I know that some people have had issues with him on hard. To be fair, his damage output is already ridiculous on hard. So going very hard, there's a couple of spots where it's basically one hit and you die. I'm so proud to have beaten that game on very hard for absolutely no reason, because there's not one trophy tied to it besides beating one chapter, first chapter.
That's how I felt when I got number 1 in Battle Royale. I was like, is this not a trophy? It wasn't.
So here's the biggest thing. I've gone back because I'm going for the platinum. I'm pretty close. I'm like 70% already. So all I got to do is go into the gauntlet thing or the Coliseum thing and get some knack tokens. And then I've got to run through the story and get at least one crystal knack, which is collecting all of one crystal relic set. There, you have to get it to 20.
Yeah.
And that's a trophy. And there's one for getting all of the skill trees completely unlocked. So, with that being said, I'm running through again, right, on New Game Plus, because that exists where you roll through with your original save and have everything from the beginning. So, the fact that I have everything from the beginning and the fact that I'm playing on normal this playthrough.
Oh, it's going to be super easy.
I'm already in like chapter 6.
Yeah, that run's going to be super
and I'm skipping
easy.
all the movies when they come up, so I'm just rolling through it. So, the other thing I've been playing, obviously, Destiny, Knack, and then I've played a little bit of my Vita this week. But I don't feel like I've played any one thing enough to actually feel like I can commit to saying I played it. But with Knack 2 being gone, you're talking about hopping onto Fortnite. The problem with Fortnite is now that I've got Knack 2 off my list, I really, really feel the urge to go pick up East 8, which I've been holding off on until I beat Knack, specifically because I was like, I don't want to get too many games where I'm cycling through.
Yeah,
because the way the Destiny grind works, and I'm trying to play with y'all's schedule, it ends up being one of those things where it's like I've purposely been pushing Knack back, even though I probably could have beaten it earlier this week. But
Makes
it's
sense.
fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. I've gotten to play and I've gotten my character up in Destiny, so I'm happy with it.
And well, Golf Story comes out on Switch real soon. It's $15. I'm definitely picking that game up.
Golf Story?
Yeah, it's like a RPG golf game that is in tune to like Earthbound and stuff. It looks really cool.
That sounds like the game
Super
I've
original.
always wanted.
Dude, it's great. I'm telling you, it looks great. But I'm going to go ahead and drop into the drop, of course.
One quick thing before the drop. Can you imagine a FIFA or sports style game to where not only did you play the life during the actual games, but then you went home and like handled the drama of the storyline going with like his wife, and then like you go out and then some guys pick you up and there's a shooting section because you're hanging with the wrong people.
Well, see, it's not like that kind of golf story. It's like
I was just thinking about the fact that it's like I'm sure it's literally just a golf game with some kind of weird RPG elements.
Pretty much. I've been keeping myself pretty blind on it, but it's really cool 8-bit style art.
So it looks like if you made like Terraria or Stardew Valley into a golf game.
Yeah, and it
still looks like you walk around the overworld though, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, like it looks like it's just an RPG, and golfing is one of the huge elements of it, which is really interesting. But something new for the drop I'm going to start doing. Everybody knows that PS4 is currently the dominant Sony system. So if I don't say the console, it's obviously on PS4. I'll bring it up PS3 or Vita when necessary.
They are making it more complicated than necessary.
Super easy. Ken, here we go. We have Batman, The Enemy Within, only on retail.
Need to pick that up, but what I've learned from Marvel
don't do it.
Guardians of the Galaxy is that I still haven't played it because it's still not completely released, even though I bought it in March or May or whatever it was. It's been too long. Continue, though.
That's true, though. Battle Chasers Night War, digitally and retail for PS4. Battle Garega Rev 2016 or Rev 2016 for PS4. I'm just going to say it anyways. I don't care. Detention for PS4. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen for PS4, both physically and digitally.
You know our boy Ryan.
He's super excited for it, and he's making me super excited for it.
He's making me excited for it, but just because I never got that far into it. You know, that's a game I played, but didn't played it.
Yeah. I always heard the magic in the game is super good.
Well, I'll tell you this much: the game had a little bit of performance issues on PS3 early days, and that's part of what kind of made me not want to go back to it. But I don't know if you noticed, he said that his pawn will be available for you. So what it is that your character that you make, your extra character, you can hire other people's little companions that they make
just because we're on the same friends list
to be your pawn. So it's like you can hire their person to run alongside you.
Is it because we're on the same friends list? What's the mechanic?
I don't think that you have to be on the same friends list. I actually think that you just search them, but it may be based off friends list. It's been so long since I played. I just remember that you could hire your friends' companions as extra pawns for you.
That's really cool, though.
Which is an interesting
So, Ryan,
concept.
let me know about that, because I'm probably going to pick
He said
it up.
it would be at your service, so I'm sure. I knew what he meant loosely.
Yeah.
I didn't mess with it a whole lot, but Jonathan had that game and played a lot of it, and that's how, you know.
With me being off next weekend, it sounds like something I want to jump into.
Yeah.
We have Expand for PS4, The Hunter Call of the Wild for PS4, physically and digitally, Judge for PS4, Mystic Bell for PS4, Save the Ninja Clan for PS Vita, Twin Robots for PS4 and PS Vita, WRC 7 for PS4, digitally and physically. And that's it for that, you guys.
Another WRC game.
Express episode underway.
Yeah, so what would you say is your most exciting game on the list?
Dragon's Dogma.
Dragon's Dogma? I'd agree.
Not including Golf Story, because that's obviously not the same thing.
I really wish that would come to Vita. That looks like a good Vita game.
What, Golf Story?
Yeah.
It'd be perfect. That's why, people are saying that they're super excited for Stardew Valley on the Vita. And did you see what they tweeted out the other day?
Oh, no.
That Stardew Valley is fully optimized and ready for the Switch, and people got so mad.
Well, yeah, but they knew that was going to happen before
Right,
Vita.
but still, it's
Vita's a little hard to develop for, considering it's 6-year-old tech now.
Pretty much, yeah. But we have reader mail questions before news. I forgot how we do
news and then we go into reader mail. So, I'm going to tell y'all it's Friday, and I've had just a ridiculous week. I've tried to keep up with the news as best I can, so if I missed anything, y'all tweet at me. Let me know. Let me know what was important to y'all. Let me know what I failed you on, and then I'll cry myself to sleep afterwards. So, going into the first thing, Warner Brothers have apologized for the situation surrounding the Forthog DLC for Shadow of Mordor that acted as a tribute to a former employee, with part of the proceeds going to his family. They've made the DLC free and are giving refunds to those who have purchased it, as well as giving a donation directly to the family of the deceased employee. So the situation revolving around this is some people didn't think it was very ethical for them to do it this way. I kind of actually thought that what they were doing was nice and in an interesting way, but to be fair, this is cleaner.
What I also read
just
online,
giving them a straight donation is honestly if you're trying to do something nice for the family, that was probably the better way to do it. But
I also read that they're not giving the full amount for each paid DLC or for each of these purchases. It's like $3 on the $10.
Yeah, because they're still paying the people who developed it. You
right?
know what I mean? To an extent.
Yeah. I just know people had issues with that as well. That's all. Yeah, that's the only thing I'll say.
To be fair, yeah, it could have been the entire amount to show respect towards his family and the employee and all that, but. Nature of the Beast, in a way, it's interesting to see them say that they, handled it in the wrong way and that they're going back and making it free and even giving refunds. I thought it's just nice. And then the fact that they wrapped it all up with giving a donation directly to the family is very nice.
Yes.
So that's good. Next thing up is that PlayStation have announced the PS Plus lineup for the month of October, like everybody's so excited about. So starting October 3rd, users can download the following titles: Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain for PS4, Amnesia Collection for PS4, Monster Jam Battlegrounds for PS3, Hustle Kings for PS3, Hue for Vita cross-buy with PS4, and Skyforce Anniversary for Vita cross-buy PS4 and PS3. So of that list, obviously the PS4 games are pretty interesting.
Solid PS4 games, both of them.
Solid? Metal
I would
Gear?
No, I was not making that. Amnesia Collection is
there's
perfect
no
for
way
Halloween.
in hell I'm going to play an expanded version of Metal Gear Solid.
For free though.
Hold on. What's the name of that game now? I can't
Ground
remember.
Zeroes.
Ground Zero. There's no way in hell I'm playing an expanded version of that game in one big open desert that looks the same the entire
It's free.
time you roll through.
Just try it out.
I've played the game. I don't need to play anymore.
It's so good. It's so good. Well, it's funny because
I agree to disagree. I agree to disagree.
I have a friend who called me out saying that I wasn't a real Metal Gear Solid fan. And it's funny because he listed something I have said, but every person I've ever has played that game has said the same thing, including Joe. That's why Joe started laughing. And it's a particular point in the game in which you just stop just because you want to, but the game keeps going. And he's like, I bet you that's what you did, huh? And I'm like, yeah, because that's pretty much where it should have ended. Or they should have ended it.
It's funny because they say
it.
there's people saying that the game was unfinished, but then there's people that I've heard of a few people say that the game should have ended at an earlier point.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying is that it in the current state it's in, it should have ended there. But because the rest of it feels unfinished.
Yeah.
That feels like a good conclusion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm still not going to play it, but I'm pretty excited for Hue. That game looks really cool, and I've almost bought it a couple times, but I've always held off. So it's good to be able to get that for free. So next thing up, Rockstar showed a new trailer for Red Dead Redemption 2 for people who are excited for that. This week, showing in-engine footage and hinting at story aspects for the first time realistically in one of the trailers. The game is still aiming for a spring 2018 release, so no further delay because there was rumor of another delay.
Going to tie in a reader question here. Red Dead trailer impressions from Ryan Turismo Sport. Thought it was great. I know Brett's not huge on Red Dead, but it super hyped me up.
It looks great. It looks like a game that for people who are excited for that game is going to be fantastic.
It's super
You know
high.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. While I don't necessarily love Red Dead, and I do think it's a little overrated, it's overrated by my standards. It did not hit what I wanted it to. I do not play that game and look at it and go, I don't see how anybody would want to play it. Actually, I'm going to say right now, I think Red Dead has more qualities that I think make sense to make it a hit than Grand Theft Auto does. Definitely Grand Theft Auto.
I've heard people say that before.
I don't think Grand Theft Auto 5, I don't even get how, I don't see how that game's gotten as big as it has. But it's just not a game for me. And me and the Grand Theft Auto series really started disconnecting around the time that the PSP Grand Theft Autos were coming out.
Yeah, like Vice City Stories.
I really liked Liberty City Stories. The Vice City Stories just did not do it for me. And I think I just kind of fell out of those. And then 4 was a big disappointment. So,
But yeah,
Still
super
interesting.
excited,
So
Ryan.
I know a lot of people are excited about Red Dead Redemption 2. It's something that everybody's been waiting for what is it, 7 years now? Because Red Dead came out in 2010.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. It's gonna be 8 technically, but yeah.
Okay, so next thing, Sony have announced that they will be turning off the online services for Gravity Rush 2 on January 19th. This will affect treasure hunts, dusty tokens, and challenges in the game, as well as a couple of picture things that are used, and that the online stuff is dynamically built into the world, so it's not going to really change anything except for making the world feel a little less alive. It's disappointing because that game is obviously only a year old, but it's also a game that doesn't warrant much for online. It's only there for people who are still playing through the story.
Does it affect the platinum?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think
it sounds
so.
like with Dusty tokens, that may affect the platinum. Because I know that Dusty tokens are like outfits, right?
I don't remember because I didn't really mess with the online side. I thought it was interesting. I did a few of the treasure hunts just to kind of get an idea of what I was doing. But that game for me was obviously very story focused, which it was for a lot of people. And most of the people who wanted to play it have already played it. Obviously, that game did not just sell skyrockets. So it is what it is. It's disappointing to hear that they couldn't keep simple online stuff up for more than a year, considering that there are games that are still playable on computer and stuff. You can still play matches on Rainbow Six Vegas 1. So it's a little disappointing to hear that this is getting shut down so early. Yeah.
From last gen?
Yeah.
That's a good game. That's a really good game.
Next thing up, a VR superhero game, Megaton Rainfall, has been delayed into October. Originally set to come out this week, it has now been pushed back to release October 17th. So we'll see if it hits that date. That's that one where you fly around and can kind of like, you can fly the surface of the sun and all this weird stuff. It looks kind of cool. I don't know if I'm going to get it quite yet. But speaking of VR, there's a virtual reality, real-time strategy MOBA called Dark Eclipse that's coming to PSVR in the West in 2018. The game features multiplayer battles using the headset to look around the battlefield while using godlike hands to place things in the battlefield.
It's probably the most interesting VR title I'm excited for.
There's a couple I've seen that use that kind of, they're using strategy and letting your head kind of move you around the battlefield, which I think is really interesting. It's almost like when you see military people having the little mini scale things.
With the pawns.
Yeah. So, I mean,
super cool.
Actually, you know what? That would make a cool VR game to where like there's a war going on that way, and you could just pick up your pawns and move them. So basically, Risk.
I was going to say that
VR.
I feel like I've seen a video game like that before. Oh wait,
well, Risk is a board game.
Wait, no. It's another game that failed miserably. I remember the trailer, but I can't remember the title. But go on.
All right, next thing, Yakuza Kiwami received Street Pack 2 DLC free of charge with update 1.09. This is the last of the free DLC planned for this release, following 3 previous free packs. Last thing I have on the list is one of the most interesting things I've seen this week is that PlayStation Australia is having an event in where they are giving away 4 real-life platinum trophies to the first person to platinum 4 participating games. The games in question are FIFA 18, Gran Turismo Sport, Call of Duty World War II, and a 4th game that is yet to be announced.
This needs to come to the West, and it needs to happen frequently, but not so where it gets old.
It's super interesting, and if you've seen what the trophy looks like, it looks really
it does.
Good.
It looks like a
really
real life
good.
platinum.
So it's super cool. I'm impressed with it, and I think it's a cool way to engage the gamers and also kind of encourage trophy hunting in an interesting way. And of course, though, it's going to be one of those things where people who are killing the trophy hunt game are going to get it pretty soon, I'm sure. You have to tweet in after you do it, in some kind of weird way, and it's weird, but either way, I still think it's interesting for Sony to do that. So, Mr. Saul, do you want to move into the rest of the reader mail real quick?
Sure. So, a part of Ryan's question about Red Dead was also still on that Destiny grind, and you know it, boy. You know it.
We are so on that Destiny grind, and I'm actually a little surprised. Don't get me wrong, I'm starting to hit my limits of where if Saul's not on, if no one's on that I feel like playing with, or if no one's on, then I'm probably just going to get off and play something else. It's one of those things. I just kind of don't see the pull is gone for me just wanting to play it because it's fun. The game still suffers from a little bit of the repetitive nature that the first game did with the base content.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays are the best 3 days
right after the reset,
the milestones.
Yeah,
but then after that, unless you're doing
which
the raid,
we still have the raid, and that the raid I feel like is gonna definitely once we run through the raid, I feel like there'll be a little more sense of completion, and maybe we'll both slow down on playing it a little bit.
And then that prestige.
I do want to go for that platinum though. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude, I'm 2 away.
Yeah.
Jonathan over at Shenanigans and such. How would you feel about another Jack and Daxter remake or even a Spyro remake? No on Jack and Daxter unless it's from the ground up. Then yes.
Well, I think that's what he's talking about when he says remake.
Yes. Then both on. Yes.
So
on
I think
both.
what he's taking, my assumption whenever I saw him tweet this in was that he's saying take the idea of the Crash Bandicoot remakes and the Ratchet and Clank remake. What if you just took those games and from the ground up rebuilt them for the console? And I think that if you did that, it's interesting enough to warrant. Only thing about Jack and Daxter is that 2 and 3 are so different that I almost feel like they would end up trying to change one. But if they handled it the same way as they did with like Crash Bandicoot, that wouldn't really happen. Because it would end up being that we just want to make these games look and play exactly like they did, but with a newer style and a little more interesting. I don't know. It's a weird way to go, but I think I would be okay with both of them because this remake thing is actually pretty interesting. And I don't know if you saw, they have confirmed that they are updating the controls.
For Shadow?
For Shadow.
Yeah, that's
now,
what I'm excited about because
it just
they are
depends
dated.
because while those games were a little, I don't want to say frustrating to play, they were unique in the way they handled, but there was something about the way that it did, it added to the charm of that game to me, and I hope that doesn't take it away, but I'll just have to wait and see when that game comes out. So, we have any more reader mail, Saul?
We do. We have good old Sean Neo at No Fate. He said, if you had to choose, would you rather have one game per series per generation? So basically, no Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 in the same gen. Or would you rather have 3 games, but only on that one gen? So would you rather have a trilogy stretched out over the course of 3 generations or 3 games in one gen?
And it doesn't have to be a trilogy, to be fair. It could be like, a good way to use it is actually the Elder Scrolls is a perfect example of what he's talking about, one game per series per generation.
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls has been doing that for a little while now.
Well, right. Well, not so
well, technically
much
not
trilogy.
because Oblivion and Skyrim were both PS3. I apologize. I didn't think about that. PS3, Xbox. So with that being said, though, there's obviously very big gaps between them, and they almost come out on the edge of other generations. So, man, it's such a hard question because what was funny is that something he specifically said in response to that, when someone else was talking about clarification for it, he mentioned Resistance 3, or he mentioned the Resistance trilogy, and it just killed me because he makes such a good point. Man, the Resistance games across one platform, you still saw such a jump that the sequels felt worthy. And there's something about constantly kind of getting to revisit that world every couple of years that I don't think I'd be willing to give up if it's going to be a series. But I get where I'm also torn in the fact of the jumps would be even crazier from generation to generation.
Yeah.
But I also feel like you start to lose that. You kind of start to, if you're trying to go for an actual, it depends on what the series is to an extent, because if it's something like Elder Scrolls where none of the stories are really connected, I think every generation would actually be kind of cool because you're going to see the jumps you want to see in that type of game. But if it's something that's a little more story driven and trying to constantly come through and create a storyline, I really want to see the storyline in one console. I want to be able to kind of keep that storyline in my head for a couple years and then revisit that storyline with new stuff as these sequels come out. So I'm going to stick with, I think I would rather than be on one console. And if nothing else, because you would end up remembering that console fondly specifically because of that series.
Yeah, I mean, see, and I'm on both sides right here, but the way I would say is probably have 3 games per generation than dead.
Well, because it's basically where I'm kind of coming into it, like where my comparison point is that the way I kind of go is that Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3 are basically that series to me. And Kart, Crash Bandicoot Racing, so CTR, Crash Team Racing. That game and the 3 before, that generation was all PS1 games, and that series pretty much died for me afterwards. None of the other games really ever did it for me. So I'm kind of using that as where my mind goes of, I still love those games experienced all through that generation, and I actually remember the PS1 more fondly specifically because I tie PS1 to those games. Yeah. I don't tie any other console to those games because no other console had those games that were actually good enough for me to feel like it was memorable on that console. So yeah, that's where I'm going. I want to say, and like Resistance 1, 2, 3 is a series that I absolutely adore, and I will always fondly remember the PlayStation 3 specifically because of that series. Of course, there's some others that I'll remember because of that, but that is just a really good series that ties home to what I think of when I think of the PS3.
I agree. Like, I think that I'd rather have the gap in the time. Think about it. There's 10 years. I'd rather have 3 really, really good games within that 10 years than one game, then 10 years later another game. roughly 10 years. So
I'm gonna say 8. That's probably
I would say,
a
and
little
that's
bit
still,
better.
if I was told that I can't get another Zelda game or Destiny game or whatever for 7 more years, it's like, nah, I want another one because the quality's not going to change in these kind of games. Like 3 or 4 years is the standard development cycle, and that's what they need.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that but then at the same time, the other thing about them being able to take time is that you never know if taking time is going to help them make the series fresh again in a way that's a lot crazier. Because could you imagine if Assassin's Creed just dropped and didn't come back for even 5 years, and then we saw Assassin's Creed come back with way more tech, flipping everything we knew about the game on its head, but still keeping elements of what made you love it in the first place for people who were fans of it?
A lot of times, though, I don't think that games need that development cycle because they'll just be kind of sitting on a shelf waiting.
Are you talking about 5 years? No, actually, I would say that
you can't
a lot of those
team
games
to 5 years of development time.
Well, I mean,
that's a big team.
That's how much, that's how much Horizon took.
That's all a big team, though.
Yeah, I mean, the Call of Duty games take 3 years now. So, I mean, 5 years would only just give them more time to polish the game a little bit. A perfect example of a game that had a long dev time and then they actually extended it because they wanted it to go into the movie was the Ratchet & Clank. That game actually sat done and had a lot more time for them to polish it and make sure that there was no bugs. Because they basically just left like a real skeleton crew on it to kind of keep working out small stuff as they were waiting for the game to release, which I actually think was a brilliant idea because that game had no notable bugs. Yeah, I don't think it had any bugs. I mean, like every game's going to eventually run into something, but that game had no common bugs. So
okay, well, that
interesting,
works. But yeah, that was it for all of the questions. Sean Neo, thank you for the great one. Ryan, thank you for the great one. Jonathan, kill yourself. Anyways, we actually know him in person. That's not a fan.
Yeah, we love Jonathan because
he's one of our best friends. But we have Brett moving in with the main topic here.
Okay, so where we're going with this, and it kind of just hit me today. It's funny because we knew we were recording today, but I've had such a ridiculous week. I haven't had much time to think about what we want to do for topic of the show, and then randomly it hit me that earlier this week. I was like, oh yeah, Andrew House made those remarks. I'm gonna say remarks or statements speaking about a possible PlayStation portable successor or PS Vita successor, really. That I completely disagree with. Now, that doesn't mean I think he's stupid for saying it or anything like that, but I do want to go into specifically everything he said. So, off of what his remarks were, Mr. Andrew House, who is the CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, he says, quote, the Nintendo device is a hybrid device, and that's a different approach and strategy. We have not seen that as being a huge market opportunity outside of Japan and Asia. There was not a huge demand for the Vita experience. There was not a huge demand for the Vita experience outside of Japan and Asia, despite the success of the Nintendo 3DS. Is kind of where we're going off of this. Is what in the hell?
just keep on going. I'm going to conversate with you without breaking the silence.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, Joe had to make reservations for 6:30. Just thought I'd let you know. That was the only time Roadhouse had. Okay,
well, don't worry about it. We'll be fine. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up because this is something that I know kind of where I stand on it, but I also just want to go. So he says that, going off of how successful the Switch is, he doesn't quite know if it's a good analog to what a Vita successor, how it would necessarily perform. So the thing about that is he says this, and of course I know that their core business right now is very focused around home consoles, and of course that's where they've seen success. So they're not necessarily looking to expand into a market that they're not going to make hand over fist money on when they're already doing so well with the PS4. Why split your focus when you can have one? Now, of course, where I stand on this is that I personally love the Vita. I've had it since day one. I actually got the week early special Founders
that's the one I think I ended up getting too, because that came with the memory card, 8 GB, the earbuds, the pouch, and
it didn't come with it came with the hard shell, which is what I have.
Okay,
which I
love. I think I just got the starter.
And you got it a week early, and I mean it was very interesting
because you got the 3G one, didn't you?
Yes.
I was gonna say, I think they made a lot of mistakes in that early marketing.
No, they made a lot of mistakes in Vita.
No, I'm talking about specifically early, but
yeah, well, yeah, and I mean early. And nobody knew how bad that was going to be until pricing crept up, and then it was like, oh,
right.
Which you had ideas that it was going to be bad because it's proprietary,
right?
And proprietary typically ends up being more expensive. Now the PSP, you saw this kind of half and half. It was proprietary, but it wasn't proprietary specifically to the PSP.
I was going to ask
it could still use. It was still able to be used across other Sony things.
So
it still drove price down.
I was so young with my PSP. Were the memory card pricing for PSP as bad as the
not near. So. And then SanDisk was able to make an off-brand one. It was still proprietary, but SanDisk made their own version of it. Which
I'm pretty sure they could not do with Sony, right?
Well, part of the reason that Sony went into this is that the memory cards was part of the reason that the PSP was able to be hacked so easily. So, of course, part of the reason they didn't want to do that is they didn't want to. They basically, because the PSP was just a farm for any kind of emulation and breaking and just bricking the console, or not breaking the console, sorry, but jailbreaking the console is what some people terminology would use. But you're basically going into the system and able to pirate it from the inside because you can make the system think that you're running official software. So they did everything they could to make sure that nobody would be able to break the Vita and do similar things with the PSP, because that drove some developers and publishers away from the PSP because there was no guarantee. There was no return of what you did guaranteed.
Their games may not have been purchased. Instead, they would have been pirated.
Exactly. So you're going to lose out on sales, because of pirating. And the pirating was so easy that every console's had pirating, but when it's as easy as it was on PSP, it's like, man, the average person can do this easily.
Well, see, and my whole thing is that without being too harsh, I think that when you shift, not blame, but you shift marketing into a way that he did, where it's basically saying the marketing's not good enough in North America. Because
you mean the market?
Yeah, the market.
Sorry, not marketing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
when he blames it on the market.
Okay, so yeah, he had some other stuff to say. So what going off, and this is an article on PlayStation Lifestyle. So this is what they had to say about it, but this is just the one I found first and clicked on it so I could tell y'all, for people who didn't know quite what he was talking about. It was based around the success of the Nintendo Switch and whether or not the Vita was going to get some kind of successor because they see a need for it in the market, and then versus why wouldn't they specifically because the Vita wasn't quite as successful. So continuing on from what I said earlier about the experience not being very demanded outside of Japan and Asia, he says the lifestyle shift toward the dominance of smartphones as the single key device that is always with you is part of the Vita not being a success, which we've heard similar statements from Shuhei Yoshida. We've heard similar stuff from just everybody in Sony as time's going along. I personally disagree with it, but at the same time as me and Saul were kind of having a micro conversation before we started recording, there are people that will lump, technically mobile gaming is lumped in the handheld gaming because it's in your hand and you're holding it.
Right, which is ludicrous.
But I do think that they house such different experiences that phones have not been able to consistently touch the quality of games that you see on handhelds. So I still view them as separate things in my mind, but to be fair, they are part of a similar market. I'm not going to say the exact same market, but it's like that cousin market.
They certainly have,
or that half sister market.
I don't think they share the same player base that are adults. I'm pretty sure kids who want to get their gaming fix in, and then they have the DS and then or the Vita, and then they have their phone. Then sure, but I don't think adults who play on these handhelds play on their phones.
Well, okay, and it goes down to
for the most part.
Vita was much more aimed at core gamers first and foremost, whereas the 3DS is aimed at casual gamers. So the 3DS and mobile gaming actually, in my opinion, have more of an overlapping than you see with Vita. And I think that's part of what he's saying is that it's gaming on phones and 3DS is just easier typically. It's stuff that's a little more built towards being put up and put down, whereas the Vita was aimed at being this console away from your console, which I loved.
And see,
but to be fair, it didn't need it because so many of these games have not been home experiences. One of the best games on the system, Severed, and Guacamelee, all these games, these are not typically what you would consider home console quality games. These are games that obviously make sense on the handheld, and they're actually the games that made that system shine in the long run. Now, don't get me wrong, you have games like Uncharted that show that this system could be a beast if it
Gravity Rush.
Gravity Rush, you had Killzone Mercenary. I'll even go as far as to say, while Nihilistic was not a very great developer, the first Resistance was not a bad take at a first-person shooter on a handheld. Much better than any first-person shooter we ever saw on the DS or the PSP.
Heard pretty bad about Call of Duty, though.
Call of Duty was not very good.
Call of Duty was dirty.
It was partially because of the way they tried doing it. It was like these little small missions that were timed and this weird stuff. Instead of letting it be its own campaign, the game was made in like 9 months. So I'm not even going to get into that.
That actually is somewhat impressive then.
And actually, I'll say it looked better than Resistance, but not just leaps and bounds. Killzone Mercenary is the go-to on that. But this episode's not necessarily a retrospective on what Vita has done wrong, even though it definitely plays part into what we're talking about with why Vita 2 would actually, or Vita successor, would be wanted and needed. Obviously, they did a lot of things that everybody liked. Or not everybody. They did a lot of things that a lot of people liked, and they did a lot of things that people kind of were like, But the overall thing is that obviously Vita has a very hungry fan base. And it's a very loyal fan base. Is it very big? Who knows? Vita sold last time I can really remember. I think it was like 20 million or something, which obviously it still sells pretty strongly in Japan. With the 3DS also, and even the PSP still selling strongly in Japan. So
which is nuts.
With what he's talking about on this Japan and Asia handheld, okay, he's right. He is right. There is more of a market for it there than ever. But I also think it gets to the point where, from a business side of things, I could get why they wouldn't want to jump into it, but I would be hard-pressed to say that they lost money on Vita. I don't think they did, because they quit pushing it, and they've continued to make money off of game sales all this time.
They'll say the marketing, or the market's not right, but here's the thing is that you didn't give that a chance because how fastly you kind of killed your own system. And like the launch,
and I do think that
because
you saw the death of the Vita in at least definitely in North America, and I would even say probably in Europe, about 2.5 years into its life cycle, which I think was just a little too premature to call it. But at the same time, I kind of got, again, from a business perspective, pulling the plug and not putting too much more money into it and just kind of letting it float on, because they didn't say that games can't be made for it, anything like that. All they said is, hey, we're not going to support it with our first party, but there's still going to be a slew of great games coming out from other developers.
It's almost like the
game, it did fine, but we keep going back to this idea of retrospective of what the Vita did, and we can talk about that a lot.
Right.
But what I want to go into is that we specifically know, he uses a Switch as a point of comparison, and he constantly says that if the Nintendo is a hybrid device, and in one of it actually doesn't say it in this one, but in one of them, he talks about the fact that people view it as a console more than they view it as a handheld. And that's something that I would really like to see numbers on, because it's something you don't know. But we were talking about, at least in terms of online community and the few people I do know that have them.
Yeah,
most people that I know actually use them as a handheld first and foremost, and only use the console when it makes more sense with like party games.
I've docked my Switch and played it on the docking mode like 3 times.
Literally once. We played Bomberman on my Switch on my TV once. I haven't docked it since. To be fair, I haven't played my Switch in probably 3 months.
Yeah.
But there's not any games that are really hitting it for me just yet. Zelda wasn't, I want to say, a letdown, but I played as much Zelda as I want before I started feeling like the experience was too repetitive. Right. And I was like, I've gotten what I needed out of it. I'm just done.
So as a consequence of this and the way that Sony's kind of shooing away a handheld idea, do you think that a lot of the indie developers that feel at home on the Vita are going to go to the Switch once the Vita dies, and then those developers are going to be missed out when the new handheld comes out, when they inevitably do it? Because they're going to do it. We all know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the argument can be made that the door is still open for them to do it. It's basically what it comes down to. This is not a nail in the coffin.
Right.
This is not them saying they'll absolutely never do it again. They're just saying right now they don't see it as a huge market opportunity. Which from a business side makes sense. But when we're talking about what people want in the gaming sense, I do think that as the Vita continues to get to a point where even the indie games that people are trying to come out with prove to be too hard to port to the Vita, because the Vita becomes the least common denominator, and it's just you're trying to go after something that's having less and less market share as the Switch continues to go up. So it's hard to say. I know that a lot of developers are very loyal to the Vita as long as people buy their games on Vita, and there's a couple of developers that have really found their home on Vita. Drinkbox Studios being one of them, the people behind Guacamelee,
Severed. And even though those games are on phones and Switches, of course.
Yeah, of course. And
that's what worries.
But those games were very heavily supported, and the Mutant Blob games also were very heavily supported on Vita from the get-go, and they knew they had a player base there, and they've continued to foster that player base and support that player base that supported them. And that's something that's respectable, and I think a lot of indie developers feel that way. They know that that there is a hungry... I'd almost say that what's funny is that because the Vita has no first-party support, they actually know that because people who have a Vita who are hungry for games are not getting it in the first-party aspect, they're going to be more likely to buy and experiment on games that they may not have taken a chance with before. So I do think the indie thing is very important. Talking specifically about how the Switch goes and how a Vita successor and the Switch would be competition-wise, I think that if Sony was smart, they would try and find a way to really emphasize, because there's no way that they haven't seen that this indie scene is what's continued to make the Vita thrive 3.5 years after they killed their system.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the system still has new games coming out to this day.
And
people are buying them.
being great games.
Yeah, so you're seeing people hungry for games on this device, and of course, you're going to start to see these games as they continue to be too hard to develop for Vita. They're going to move to Switch as the handheld option, and then of course there's going to be people on Switch who are hungry for games also because we're not in a steady stream of Switch releases just yet.
It reminds me of the 3DS launch, how it came out with the stupid submarine game and a Zelda game.
Yeah, but to be fair, this launch was still much stronger titles, and we've seen continued stronger titles. We have Splatoon 2 now, Mario Kart, and all that.
Mario Odyssey.
Even though I think a lot of these are just kind of reusing the Wii U ideas, these are games that weren't experienced by a lot of people, and they're beloved games. But going on to that, there's hunger in that market for these indie games. So of course they're going to move to Switch, and as they move to, and I say move to Switch as long as Nintendo fosters and facilitates a good environment for indies to work in,
which I would
which has been half and half. There are some indies that say they're not doing very well.
Currently, I would say it's doing pretty good because there is in the same boat that the Vita is, where there's not a whole lot of first party support out now. And then so people are turning to games like Golf Story.
Well, yeah, but of course, even then, the games it's got to be easy enough to work with Nintendo to make these games. So as long as they're facilitating a good way to help indie developers make their games on their console, I think you'll see them move there. And I think if a Vita successor was to ever come, you would end up seeing the same. I think that if Sony was smart, you'd end up seeing the same support on the Vita. Because now the Vita comes to a point where it's technologically to a point where it's able to do these things, if that makes sense. So going off of that, I think that you're right. There's not a nail in the coffin for the Vita 2. I'm just going to call it Vita 2.
Right.
It's the easier way to do it. So there is no nail in the coffin for the Vita 2, but I think that Sony is more worried about making their money where they're making their money right now, and that's focusing on PS4. And obviously they're knocking it out of the park. There is so much first party support and also just partnered, developers, second party support, third party relations stuff. That there's no hurt for anything on PS4 almost.
Yeah, correct. It makes sense
and
too.
The only way I would want to see a Vita successor come out with what they're talking about here, I think that they would, because they've seen how well it works with the PS4. The only way a Vita successor could come out is if they came out of the gate with just a ridiculous games lineup.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter if they're first party. People just want quality games. First party does not. Not first party. AAA.
Right.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
No, but even then,
AAA does not necessarily mean quality. Just like indie doesn't necessarily mean quality. But what's funny is that now we're in this realm where you can launch a system with a lot of really good indie games that are really interesting, and people will actually buy into them.
My whole thing is that Sony always says like proprietary this, proprietary that, hacking.
Well,
Nintendo runs off micro SD cards.
Yeah, but Nintendo also gets hacked a lot. But
they're still super successful.
Core market's a lot of children, and it's also Japan. Japan doesn't have that big of a pirating issue.
I wouldn't say the core market's children anymore. I mean,
don't get me wrong, it's split, but it's heavily geared towards children.
Geared toward, yes.
And then the other thing is a lot of their games. I mean, you can get things to hack it, but regardless, I think that there's always going to be piracy. There's just almost no way around it. Now,
exactly.
So to be fair,
consumers.
Vita's not getting hit yet. 3DS has been pirated. I mean,
I thought Vita is on hit. I thought you can't hack a Vita.
You can get into it, but you can't play. You can't play official software for it yet. You can only play emulators.
3DS has a couple of different ways, but that means Nintendo still goes strong, and they don't limit themselves by saying,
and I agree, but also because there's more developer support, knowing that these games are going to sell well because it has a bigger install base. Sony had to do this stuff from the get-go because PSP kind of sloped off at the end, even though it sold 80 million strong, whereas the Vita was coming up from the PSP that had this issue, and I guarantee you to even get developers to our publishers that really to go, hey, we are going to partner with you, we will release this game on there. They had to assure publishers that they were not putting money into something that would have absolutely no return because of easy ability to hack it.
It was Pandora's battery, wasn't it?
Yeah, Pandora battery was one of the ways.
Which is crazy because that's a battery, not a card.
Well, the memory card played into it. You had to use the battery and the memory card at the same time, and it was crazy. Okay, I could explain it to you because I did it. And,
yeah, I have. I used to have it.
Yeah,
I don't know where it's at.
But regardless, I did it, and I was part of the problem. I'm not a poor little kid now. I was a teenager back then. I didn't have money. I'm not a poor kid now, so I buy everything. But pirating is just a very different thing. And I think that they had to do it to an extent. So when you're talking about a Vita 2 coming, some of the similar things would come into play, but I would really hope that they would find a way to just kind of back off and go, okay, here it is. Here's what the system's going to be. We're hoping it's going to sell just like the Vita's been doing off of the quality of the games that we're releasing and the amount of games that still release for the console. If they can keep that kind of pace up, I guess is probably the best way to word it. It's a pace of games.
And make it, and even Sean, when Neo pointed out in his tweet to us, he had an idea of it being a handheld as a controller.
He's mentioned this a whole lot, and actually it's funny. It's the first time I've seen him actually show
like a mock-up.
The mock-up. I thought that was pretty interesting. But with that being said, I want to go over what some of the people on here said. So, of course, No Fate said, I've said this a few times, I would like Sony to release a new handheld in the form of DualShock 5 controllers boxed with PS5. So I get where he's going. He's saying keep the DualShock 4 the same controller moving forward into the PS5 and then let the DualShock 5 be this. And what this is basically it almost looks like a Wii U Pro controller with a screen slapped in the middle. I just don't realize that screen is either going to be really small or that's going to be a very big controller. That has to be. Don't get me wrong, it's a mock-up, and it's just something somebody did. I understand. That's basically all Vita stuff, the way it is.
I thought it'd be cool. You know, Sony has a good line of phones. The Xperia line's a pretty decent line of phones. It would be so cool that if they would release a device that is essentially an Xperia screen or an Xperia. Think of a tablet-style Xperia like the Switch, but it docks onto an actual DualShock, and that's the controller.
Well, then what's doing the processing? The screen box?
Tablet. The whole tablet. Like, it's essentially a Sony Xperia tablet that docks onto the Switch. That docks onto the DualShock 4.
Well, that basically exists now. You can get little things that you can dock and I'm talking about your phone.
And
you dock it up there.
But I'm talking about its own standalone device, like a Switch, but docks into a controller, which is the DualShock and connects via Bluetooth. And then that's the machine.
Then you're carrying a lot more stuff around, though.
You do the same thing with Switch. And it's successful doing it.
But and don't get me wrong, I play the Switch as a handheld. It is not.
I actually saw somebody.
It is not by far a successful handheld.
He said
the design is awful.
The dude takes his Joy-Cons off, sticks them in his back pocket, then sticks the tablet in his other back pocket. I'm like, you're gonna crush it. Like, you know how I am. I'm OCD.
Too big. It wouldn't even fit in the majority of my pockets. It fits in one pair of my pants.
See, and I'm OCD anyways.
And I keep everything in the case. And it makes it that much harder.
I keep everything in a case, and I always put it in a bag, or I just carry it because it's never that inconvenient to me. Because until I'm having to use both hands, that's my draw.
And I just feel like my number one thing about a Vita 2 has consistently been that I think that the form factor is perfect of a Vita.
It's true. I like
all you do is make it a little thicker, maybe, and just thick enough to add those buttons we're talking about, clickable analog sticks, which we've already seen on thin, so they can do that.
Go back and watch like episode 13 where we talked about that. But
when we're talking
we went through a wish list of what we want on a Vita 2.
Yeah, but I guess my thing is that so I wanted to talk about Switch sales before, and we're getting a little lost in the weeds on some stuff here. So sorry about that, guys, if we've been kind of ranting talking in circles a little bit. But
it's actually episode 6. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it's really early. So what I want to go into is he's talking about this. You don't know. He was saying you don't know how well the Switch is going to continue to perform for how long, because one thing to mention is that, of course, the Switch is a new console. New console adoption rates are always very high. That's just the way these things kind of work out. The first year of any console normally sells pretty well. The first year of the Wii U sold decent, and then you saw a heavy slope after that. But the first few months were the strongest. Then you saw decent for the rest of the year, and then it really sloped off. So with that being said, you can look at the Switch numbers to an extent, and say, it's not really selling that much. You don't know if it's going to continue. But I think that the sales, as we've seen as of July, so this is back in July, we haven't seen official number count come out since then. The guesstimation is somewhere around 8 to 10 million units, depending on how they've been able to get them out right now. So back in July, the official number is that the total sales of the device is 4.71 million units. Now, that's impressive.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And that's impressive for a number of reasons. It goes to show that the console has consistently sold that strongly, partially due to supply constraints too. So it creates that almost, I won't say false, but every time there's supply constraints on anything, people almost want it more.
I was gonna say,
so it keeps demand up. But with that being said, you're talking, I
could get a SNES Mini really easily. If not,
what you're talking about is 5 million units in a 4-month period in July.
That's
a
million units a month, basically.
Period.
That's a lot.
That's really good. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. PlayStation was crushing that, but for what this is,
certainly
for what this is good numbers, and the numbers have not slowed down at all. So what I would really like to see is if there is, and we don't have that information now. I looked around for it for as long as I could, and just couldn't come up with anything. But I would really like to see if they could get a survey going to look at how many people actually use the Switch as a dedicated handheld, with the added ability of just being able to hook it up to a TV, or how many people use it as a dedicated console with the added ability of being able to take it if you absolutely need to.
I think that's how it should have been marketed, as a handheld with a dedicated cool ability.
And I agree, and they flipped and said console, but I still think that most people took the idea of it being a handheld first and foremost. I don't think I would, and again, these are all thinks. I really super curious to see what numbers would be on something like this.
Yeah,
I really want to know.
I want to see if I can make a straw poll and then potentially post on the Nintendo Switch subreddit and see if I could if that won't break any rules, and then report back next week with that.
I would be interested in doing that. Just going on the Reddit and just seeing the people who constantly use it and seeing where they use it the majority, because I think that the feel that I get, the general feel from everybody I know who's had one and people I see talking about online, is that it is first and foremost a handheld for them. And if you look at people, when some people talk about what holds it back, sometimes the people are like, oh, well, the Switch isn't very strong. The people who are more into the power side of it, they go, well, it's a handheld. More people go towards the mental side of it being a handheld than do a console.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I've heard one person call it a console that I know that I've talked to.
Somebody, and I was telling you this earlier, I don't remember who it was, but somebody pointed out that the Switch is weaker than the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii U. And I'm like, right, because you're comparing these to home consoles instead of comparing them to home consoles. Well,
actually, I'm going to say I thought that the Switch was right about. I thought it was a little bit more powerful than the PS3.
Well, see, and I think it is just
because technically the Wii U was technically more powerful on one side, but its CPU was dirt.
Yeah,
its GPU was great. Its CPU was horrible. So it had great graphics processing power, but it had no actual processing, computational output.
The guy who said that could be mistaken.
Well, either way,
I want to say it's from IGN, but
either way,
you're not wrong.
You're not talking about this thing comparing to home consoles in any form or fashion.
Yeah, you don't do that. It's such a new.
Well, you can't compare even when the Switch docked, when it's at full power. When it has the extra crap that plugging it in lets it run, it's plugged in, so you don't have to worry about overheating a battery. Even at its best, it cannot run the majority of cross-platform games.
Of course not.
Now, there's some that can be scaled down relatively easily, like sports games and stuff. But you're not going to see
Doom.
You're not going to see a game like Mass Effect Andromeda on the Switch. You're just
I'm interested in seeing Wolfenstein 2 run on it. I'm really curious as to how that's going to look.
Wolfenstein 2 is coming out on it,
and Doom. You didn't hear about that?
I know Doom is, but I didn't know Wolfenstein 2 was.
Oh yeah. So I'm really interested on what that's going to look like and how it's going to run.
Well, good for Bethesda.
How huge Breath of the Wild is, it looks really good for the escape of the game.
Well, actually, have you seen the shader being taken off of it? It looks like a PS2 game.
The shader?
Yeah, it's got a cartoon shader that sits on top of everything, and which lends itself to the art style, right?
I have no idea.
There's somebody who found a spot in the game where you can break the shader, where it just goes to what the actual model is, and it looks like Shadow of the Colossus.
I bet it does. I'm not gonna look at it.
So definitely, what it comes down to is them finding interesting ways to manipulate the system to seem more powerful than it is, which is what consoles are all about. To be fair,
it is.
But
that's all upscaling is.
It's so hard to look. Going back to the main argument, it's so hard to look at 5 million units sold in such a short period of time, and now we're talking 8 million units out from when the Switch released early March, right?
Yeah. So that's
okay.
What,
so
6
early
months?
March to now, you're talking 7 months, I guess.
So I'd say 7 months. That's a little over $1 million a month.
It's about to be 7 months because we're going into October. So so talking about that, you're talking about 7 months of sale, and there's been no slowdown. I don't think Sony can look at that and go, well, it's just a market that we don't really feel like there's much demand for. You're seeing
a huge, bless you, a huge revolution in these handheld numbers. And some people, like I said, it's such a weird concept because is it handheld? Is it console? It's both.
And
it qualifies as both. It has console graphics,
it does.
and you can compare it to consoles all you want. And yeah, it has crap console.
Well, it has last gen console graphics. Kind of like it's in this weird in between,
which is cool for being able to take it with you.
Yeah, it is. It is. The battery life is something that is an issue. There's a lot of hurdles that I feel like the Switch did not handle very well. The fact that you can only play Zelda on a handheld mode for like 2.5 hours is ridiculous.
See, I always got around 4.
I never got that.
I don't know what I was doing.
I got 3 at the most.
And it might be because I treat my Switch like I treat my Sony Gold headset. The second I power my PS4 off, I plug it in and it charges. So the second I turn my Switch off in sleep mode, I throw it in the dock to let it charge.
Yeah, I never use a dock.
Oh, that's all I use to charge it. So I guess I was wrong when I said I've only docked it.
But that goes back to something that what I was talking about goes back to what Andrew House is saying is that it's a hybrid and that they have a different approach. It is true. Sony does not need to copycat itself into this Switch situation and to try and capitalize on some of this market. That's not going to help them. What's going to end up being, and what we really need, is for Sony to pave their own path. If it's going to be a hybrid, it needs to be a hybrid in a discernibly different way.
Yeah, in a true sense as well.
And I don't know how you do that. I really thought the elegant solution was exactly what they were doing, which is probably not very cost effective, which is what they were doing with the Vita and the PS3, which was making the same game for both. When you buy one on PS3, you get the download for the Vita one. And
that's what all cloud saving
and then you throw your cloud save around, which I thought was honestly more elegant than trying to push much power into a handheld that when you put it in handheld mode, you only get 3 or 4 hours of battery. I typically get 7 hours of battery life out of my Vita. Yeah, that's what I want.
And cloud save was intended as take your console over here or go to somewhere else, sign in your account, and take your save down. I'm going somewhere that has a PS4. That has the game I'm playing, and I have the time to actually do all this. No, that's not a true concept. That's what I think cloud saving was originally intended for.
Being able to throw your games back and forth. Yeah, between two different systems. Yeah, I thought that it worked so well. I did it so much with Terraria.
It works really
I did it
well.
Remember, I was doing it with Terraria on PS4. It works amazingly. And see, it's so quick that if they can find a way for you to seamlessly throw your game over and it can like almost pick up,
maybe even on the handheld itself would be really cool.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. It'd be really interesting to see, but it comes down to how do they do it without feeling like they're completely aping the Switch, because the way the market works is that anytime somebody comes out with something and it turns out to be a good thing and it really sells for them, the competition always tries relatively to do the same thing. Imitation it works. Microsoft came out with Xbox Live. Sony saw how well it was doing, and they go, "Oh man, this is a real deal. We're going to have to come out with PSN. We're going to have to make an online thing. We have to make a PS Store." And that's why they were behind. They had to catch up. They had to go, "Oh, people really like these achievements. We're going to put trophies, and we're going to put our own twist on it." And that's how they need to do it. The same way they handled making trophies be something that was obviously inspired by achievements, but still so different that the pool is very different. I never had a pull for achievements, not even because I'm not that big of an Xbox person. The score doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah,
there's something about the level of what the trophy is. It's bronze, it's silver. So going off of that, if they can find a way to put their own twist on this hybrid idea in a way that works, I think, more elegantly than what Switch does, because I think there's an argument that Switch is more elegant because of the fact that it's literally just pull it up and it's ready to go, but it's held back by a lot of things. It's held back by this battery and trying to still scale the game down. Honestly, I think that even if they came out with a Vita 2, obviously, say it came out a year from now and they R&D'd it, it would be about, if it could be as powerful as the Switch with a 720p screen and find a way to let the batteries work a little bit better. I mean, USB-C was a smart decision on Nintendo's part. I'd want to see Sony do that as well. Which you started seeing them move away from proprietary with that micro USB inclusion of the
was it? Macro USB
on their
or
first
mini USB? No, for PSP, mini USB.
Oh
right?
yeah.
That's garbage. Slow charge times. You can never find it at like Walmart, which is
it was a normal USB cord for PSP.
Right, but what is that called? Mini USB.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, I could never find those cables anywhere.
Those are normal USB cords, the same ones that came with your PS3 to charge your controller. It's a normal USB.
I mean, I'm sure it is. I didn't have a PS3 at that time though.
But
But as
either
a
way-
kid, I couldn't find
Either
it.
way, there's ways that they could come out in the market, but I think the biggest thing is that we personally see what he means in terms of why they are not necessarily doing it, but I disagree that
Yes.
at least from a personal standpoint, I think that I know enough people to where I feel like there's enough evidence, including the Switch sales numbers, to say that there is a market here for this. How big is that market, and
It's
how
gonna be
readily
huge.
available is it to explore? When definitely, because unless they release one right now, you don't know.
Yeah.
So you're talking a year from now.
hentai in Japan is absolutely crazy, but it still has it's loyal fans here. It's like, come on, you can't keep comparing these markets. Anyways, you guys, you can always find us on Triangle SQRD on the tweets and
On the tweets.
on the tweets. I'm gonna go twit. And of course, all of the podcast services we mentioned in the episode below. We did about 4 or 5. So
Of course, it was really short notice that we kind of did this episode, and it kind of needed to be a quick episode due to scheduling issues and stuff like that. But I'm very curious to hear more of y'all's thoughts on what a Vita 2 should be, what a Vita 2 could be, and whether or not a Vita 2 even deserves to live at this point. And I think that my answer still falls in the fact that in my dream world, a Vita 2 should exist. From Sony's marketing standpoint and where they are at a business perspective, just coming out of the red and coming back into being in the black, I think that it's probably very prudent of them to not be trying to just jump back into something that could potentially hurt them.
and don't blame it on the market, because that's real messed up. Like as a company, maybe, but still, don't come and say,
Well, no, but I mean, you to be fair, you blame everything on the market. I mean, the market is the reason the PlayStation 4 is exceeding. The
Well, yeah,
market
but
is the reason.
I wish I'd have faith in their fans, is what I should say. They should have faith in us,
Faith ain't-
Westerners.
Faith ain't money in your pocket, though.
Boy, if they came out with Vita 2, there would be money in their pocket right then and there for me.
Well, it'd be really interesting to see because you constantly see these games. This is going to be my last thing. You constantly see game makers making games that people are literally clamor for forever. And is it that the execution is so bad, or is it the fact that they didn't really want it? Because I don't know if you saw, and I meant to put it in the news, Marvel vs. Capcom flopped.
Dude, they took out, you can't play with 3 characters, you can only play with 2.
Well,
And
yeah,
they took
again,
characters
the
out.
execution's part of that, but they made
Chun-Li ugly.
they made Mirror's Edge 2, game that people clamored for, didn't sell very well.
Yeah, that game was garbage.
So I mean,
Garbage.
there's very quick for people to say they want something to when it comes out they don't actually go through with what they were saying. So again,
with a huge player base
having
that's
faith in us
on-
and listening to people saying they want one does not necessarily equate to money in their pocket. So it's not a bad thing that Sony's trying to be a little.
Sony came out with their own credit card today. Boy, if you're poor, get that, buy the Vita 2.
All right, so that's where we stand on this Vita 2 thing. I want to see one personally. I understand why Sony isn't necessarily gung-ho to jump back into it, but I keep the reservation that Sony will eventually one day do this. That is not a guarantee. It's like a gut feeling.
Right. And
Because I'll honestly say I
it-
never expected a Vita, and they did it.
Yeah, and I can't see them not doing another handheld while the Switch is out. And see, it's just all about when
So
they
you're
release
saying
it.
throughout the whole Switch's life cycle.
Oh, no doubt within 2 years, Sony's going to reveal a new handheld.
It'll be really interesting to see.
100%. Come back to episode 27 and prove me wrong.
Yeah, do it. All right, this has been episode 27. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.